This is Ken, the founder of Inspire Magazine and Inspire University. He was burned over 65% of his body in 1971 when a laundry truck turned in front of a motorcycle he was riding in San Francisco. In 1975, he crashed on takeoff in a small aircraft he was piloting due to ice on the wings and injured his spinal cord, leaving him paralyzed from the waist down. But today, as an international keynote speaker, he captivates and stuns audiences with his story and then calmly empowers them to accept challenges, embrace change and take action not only at work but in everyday life. His tenacity and credibility are indisputable as he so obviously lives his message. His accomplishments have received recognition on Good Morning America, The Today Show, NBC Nightly News, Time Magazine, USA Today, and many others. He has been a radio and television host, successful author of the book It's Not What Happens to You, It's What You Do About It. This is the book, and the subject of the television special Superhumans. He truly is unstoppable. Please welcome the Bill Mitchell. Hi.
Yeah, great to be with you today. Top of the day to you.
Yep.
Whatever time it is, wherever everybody is in the world who's going to watch this, have a beautiful day.
What will actually happen in both accidents?
Kent, that's a great question, and I appreciate your asking me that. My life was amazing. I was doing all kinds of wonderful things. I had a job driving the famous San Francisco cable cars. For your viewers and readers who know about San Francisco and have seen movies and shows, that's that little old-fashioned car that goes up and down the hills of San Francisco. And it's just wonderful, just a great experience. I loved that job. And I was taking flying lessons. I was learning how to fly an airplane. And so one afternoon, I bought a brand new motorcycle, great big powerful motorcycle. And the very next morning, got on the motorcycle and drove it to an airport where I got in an airplane. And for the first time in my life, I soloed. I flew the plane by myself. There was nobody else in it, nobody there to tell me what to do. And one of the exhilarating experience to be fully in charge of yourself, to be in a place where no one else has anything to do with what you're doing. And then that afternoon, driving to work to my job on the cable cars on my brand new motorcycle, a laundry truck smashed into the motorcycle, knocked it to the ground, and the petrol cap popped open. And out poured about 6 or 8 liters of petrol all over me, and the heat of the engine ignited it. And I literally became a human bonfire. Told later by witnesses at the scene that day, they were frozen in fear, terrified. But one man ran out of a car dealership. He was a car salesman, automobile salesman. Ran out of the car dealership and put out the flames with the fire extinguisher. And I talk about that sometimes in my speeches, about the power of one person. The power that one person has to make an incredible difference in somebody's life. And we don't have to be rich, we don't have to be famous, we don't have to be powerful. Any one person at any given moment has enormous power, the power within, some people say, to take control of a situation. So thanks to that one person, I was still alive when the ambulance crew arrived and they rushed me to the hospital. And of course that adventure went on for months, barely wondering whether I would live for a few weeks before I started to wake up and even knew what had happened to me. And then after I knew I'd live, I had to ask myself the question, live for what? With my fingers gone and my face gone and 65% of my body burned. But an enormous experience, amazing experience. So that was the first accident, almost 4 months before I got out of the hospital, and then a long time before I was able to use these hands. These hands, the fingers were gone. All or most of each finger was gone. So, and they were incredibly sensitive, Kent. So the idea of touching anything was impossible. I couldn't stand the feel of that. So I had to be fed and bathed and dressed. But over a long period of time, as I was able to gain the use of my hands again and start flying again, a long, incredible journey And sometimes we want instant answers. Sometimes we want the whole thing to get solved right now, when in fact, sometimes it's a step at a time. The Chinese fortune cookie says the longest journey begins with a single step.
Yes, right.
Sometimes we're afraid to take the first step. And then when we don't get what we want on the first or second or third or fifth step, we start to say, well, how come I didn't get the thing I was... Well, because it's a journey. And sometimes if you learn to enjoy the journey, I had a friend that said once that the truly successful person in life is the person who can enjoy the detours on the journey. Sometimes life has put you in different directions and has you do different things than you first imagined. So those were all some and obviously countless other lessons that I learned along that experience. And then with an insurance settlement that I received a couple years after the accident, I was able to move to Colorado, to the beautiful, magical mountains of Colorado. And again, I don't know how many of your readers and viewers remember a singer named John Denver, but he was a famous singer years ago in America. And John Denver sang about Rocky Mountain High, about being up in these phenomenal mountains. If you think about the Himalaya, or think about some of the other mountains closer to Asia, get an idea of the experience that I had when I moved there. And I finished my pilot's training, and I bought a beautiful airplane and started some businesses and some companies. And one day I was flying my airplane, taking 4 other people on a ride, and I thought I had inspected the airplane carefully enough, but obviously I didn't, because when I got into the air, something was wrong. And the plane wasn't flying as it should, and ahead of me were all these rocks and rough terrain, but below me still was a runway, still a chance to put it back on the ground. I had to make an instantaneous decision, and I pulled the power. I actually stopped the engine, and the plane stalled. It didn't just, the engine didn't stop running, it actually fell out of the air, crashed back onto the runway, and my 4 passengers were able to get out and run away. But I couldn't move my legs. I couldn't feel my legs. And the ambulance crew once again arrived to rescue me and took me to the hospital, and they told me I'd never walk again. And then later I was told I didn't do the inspection as carefully as I'd been trained, and I took off with ice on the wings, and that violates one of the cardinal rules of flying a plane, especially up high in the mountains. And so, again, a long journey, a long, amazing, sometimes frustrating, sometimes defeating and discouraging. But along that journey, a lesson that I had learned during the time that I was burned and began to grow in my own mind, a lesson that it's not what happens to you, it's what you do about it, the title of my book, was a lesson that once again I was reminded of. Sometimes we need other people to remind us. Sometimes we can't remember everything we know. We're not smart enough. We learn lots of things in our lives, and some of that gets forgotten. Some of the victories that we had, some of the strengths that we've had, some of the things we've learned along the way. And fortunately for me, I had a team there. I had people to help remind me, and I had books, and I had recordings, and I had other smart people along the way who were there to guide me and help me in my life. So I was very fortunate in that, and came back from that and a whole bunch of other experiences, and I'm sure we'll talk about that too.
Yes, right. So where did you get the courage and strength after the accidents?
Well, that's again a wonderful question. Where did I get the courage? Well, I think we're all born with a certain amount of stuff inside us. Again, sometimes we don't use it every day. Sometimes it's kind of a hidden resource, but I'm not sure that any of us are born a lot different than anyone else. Now, you can point to the exception and point to someone who doesn't have the mental capabilities, or somebody who can't see, or somebody who can't hear. Well, yeah, we sometimes have different challenges that go on in our life, but the reality is that I think we're all born with the capability of learning the way. We don't always know the way. We don't have all the maps in our head, but we have the ability to learn the way. And fortunately for me, I think I was always a fairly aggressive person. I was always a person who just took off and went out and did stuff. And so I wasn't afraid to do stuff. And that was good. That was helpful. And I had also studied, there was an outfit, a human potential organization called Morehouse in the city of San Francisco. Before I was burned, I started to associate with that organization. And I learned two huge lessons. And these are lessons that any of your readers or any of your viewers need to have and be clear about and to remind themselves about again and again, because the challenge is that, yeah, we know stuff, but then we have people that tell us we can't. We know stuff in the back of our brain, but then we feel it's impossible. We understand, and at one point we're quite adventurous. As a child, most of us were very adventurous.
That's right.
Most of us weren't afraid of anything. We weren't afraid to try anything. But then somebody said, "Be careful." Somebody said, "Oh, well, you don't want to go there. You might not win."
That's right.
If you want to play football, well, fine, but your team may lose. You may not be big enough. You may not. We're told we don't know any of this when we're born.
Yep.
When we're born, we're not afraid of anything. But then we learn to be afraid, and so sometimes we have to have somebody help us unlearn some of the negative lessons that we've learned along the way. The two lessons that I learned, Kent, in my amazing journey in life was life's a choice. That an awful lot. Now, somebody again can argue with me and point to the exception and tell me, well, yeah, but that didn't work in my city. Well, okay, maybe it doesn't work 100% of the time. What if it works 51% of the time? Life's a choice. We get to choose what we do next. Well, I didn't choose to be born in Malaysia. I wish I was born in Hollywood. Okay. Well, there are planes every day, as far as I know, leaving Kuala Lumpur that go to Hollywood. Every day. Lots of planes. Well, yeah, but you have to be rich to get on one of them. No, that's not true at all. Because there are a whole bunch of people who get on those planes who are not rich. Now, you need some resources, absolutely. Well, it's hard. You need passports and papers and things. Okay, yeah. But go down to the airport and watch the airplanes every day, and there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of airplanes taking off every day full of people who are going to Hollywood. So if that's your goal, make a plan. Work the plan. Well, I can't go today. Okay, well, you can't go today. But you can start planning today for tomorrow and the next day. Life's a choice. You get to choose what you do next. I believe that. Are there exceptions? Well, I have a family, and I have a house, and I have a job. Yes, those were all choices too. It was a choice to have a family. It was a choice to have a house. It was a choice to have a job. Those are all choices you made. Good for you. You made the choices. Now, what's your next choice? And, well, it didn't work. I tried it, and it did. Well, good for you. A lot of people have tried things, and they didn't work the first time, or the 10th time, or the 50th time, or the 500th time. How badly do you want it? What did you learn from the experience that didn't get the result that you wanted? You see, was it just some failure? I tried and I failed. Well, did you fail? Well, then you're a failure. If you failed, you're a failure. But if you learned something from it, if it was an experience from which you gained something, at least to know how not to do it the next time, or to make a small adjustment so that next time you can be pointed in a slightly different direction, do it a little bit differently, then it wasn't a failure at all. It was a lesson. And we've all heard the story of Thomas Edison, and the inventor of millions of things, including the light bulb. And he didn't get it the first time he made an effort, or the second, or the fifth, or the 500th, or even the 5,000th, I've been told. It took him 10,000 times, or something like that, they say, to create a light bulb. Well, what if he had given up after 9,999? We'd all be using kerosene lanterns today. So I learned about choices. And when it sounds easy to people, it's not easy. Climbing Mount Kilimanjaro is not easy. Mount Everest is not easy. Swimming in the Olympics, getting in the Olympics is not easy.
Yes, right.
It's not easy to swim. The first time you ever jump in the pool, you're not a fish. You have to learn how to do it. But life's a choice. I believe that. And if we stop fighting, well, you didn't get the situation I got. You weren't born in a family and didn't get to do this. You make up all the excuses you want if that's what you want to do. And it doesn't bother me if you do it. If you don't want to get the thing that you say you want to get, then good. Don't get it. My life will be fine. But I believe that where we are right now at this moment had a lot to do with choices that we made. And if we acknowledge that fact, then we can acknowledge the power we have to make another choice. And another choice. And maybe it'll take you 5 years to get to Hollywood. Maybe it'll take you 10 years. Maybe it'll take you 20 years. Well, okay. I don't think they built the pyramids in an afternoon.
Yes, sir.
It takes a while. Okay, so that was the first lesson. The second lesson I learned was responsibility.
Yeah.
The fact is that all of us have the ability to respond. I don't mean fault, blame, and guilt. I'm talking about the ability to respond. Response-able. That's what a man named Stephen Covey, who wrote an amazing series of books, including one of the most powerful, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And Steve Covey, in that book, talked about the real definition of responsibility, which is one that I had learned, I believe, before I was burned, that I get to choose my response to what happens in my life. You see, it's not what happens to you, it's what you do about it, because all kinds of stuff happens. You get in a traffic jam, you get into a car smash, you get into financial challenges, the thing that you wanted to do didn't work. That's called being a human on Earth. If you think that's not fair, well, guess what? That's part of the ticket that you bought when you became a human on the planet Earth. And if you're smart enough to be being inspired by what you're doing, Kent, if your listeners and viewers and readers are wise enough to be reaching for something to improve their life, then they're already on the path. They're already choosing a response. And they're choosing to make themselves know more, be more, do more. And so they're on the path to making better decisions, more good decisions about where their future will take them.
Okay. So some people have all the things other people dreaming of, but they're still blaming their lives. So what's your advice to them? They keep blaming and blaming and blaming.
Well, go keep blaming. If you're getting what you want, then keep doing what you're doing. If you're happy with what you have, then good for you. Enjoy the ride. And if that means blaming yourself, giving up, quitting, blaming other people, blaming life, blaming your parents, blaming the horoscope, blaming you, go ahead. It's fine with me. That's your business.
Okay.
But that's a choice.
Yeah.
That's a choice, just like the choice to stop blaming is a choice.
Right.
And people get to pick their choices. Is it easy? I'm not saying it's easy. But you don't get the gold medal in the Olympics by taking it easy. You don't get to be a successful teacher or a successful entrepreneur or a successful parent or a successful student by taking it easy. The people at the top did not get there by taking it easy. And the blame business of, well, you make it sound like you can just go in. Well, it wasn't. I lay in a hospital bed with most of my body burned, and my fingers gone and my face gone, and that wasn't easy.
That's right.
But it happened, and I could spend my life blaming and complaining, and criticizing, and sometimes I blame and criticize and complain. I'm a human being. I'm not perfect. I'm not sitting here saying, "Oh, Mitchell, you never do." Well, my life's my life, but I know how to focus. The key words that I have in my message, I have a card that I share with people, and I hope that this will reproduce well enough. Let me see, how am I doing here? Yes. That's probably pretty good. Oops, are we getting the bottom of this? This is really important. That it's not what happens to you, it's what you do about it. And on the very bottom are 6 key words. And the key words are choices, responsibility, focus, courage, and gratitude.
Okay.
Did I miss one? I don't think so. Choices, responsibility, perspective, excuse me.
Yep.
Perspective, focus, courage, and gratitude.
Yep.
And those 6 key words are, to me, some of the most important words in the entire world. Because if we choose, again, to spend our life without focus, without pointing ourselves in the direction of our dreams, if we just sitting waiting for it to happen to us, well, I don't think somebody's going to run in your place and drop a bag of money in your lap.
That's right.
Or drop happiness in your lap, or contentment or wisdom or any of the rest of it. These are all things that you have to go seek and achieve. And again, your viewers, your readers are pursuing that dream just by the fact that they picked up the book, just by the fact that they picked up the article, just by the fact that they're watching and listening means that you're on the path. So, well, how long does it take to get there? I don't know. Maybe you're there right now. Maybe you're in a great place right now by learning, by growing. If it's just drudgery and someday it's going to be wonderful, well, I'm not sure that's necessarily what. Is it hard? Yeah, hard is a reality, but hard doesn't have to be drudgery, it doesn't have to be misery. It's you choosing where you want to point your attention, where you want to focus your attention.
So you mentioned about mental prison in other videos. So what is that?
Say that again.
Mental prison.
Mental prison.
Yes, right.
Well, the mental prison is what we all wind up in sometimes. And the physical prison, we all know what that is. It has walls and bars and things like that. But sometimes we sit around, again, saying, I can't do it. Everybody's picking on me. The world's not fair. How come I didn't get a better break? How come my boss doesn't love me? How come I don't have better hours? How come I didn't get that other job? How come? And so we sit around counting all these things that are losses in our life that seem to be unfair in our life, instead of sitting around and saying, wow, I got this job, which allows me the opportunity to do a number of things, including learn how to be a better boss. If you don't like your boss, that's a wonderful opportunity for you to learn how to be a better boss. What would you do differently when you're the boss? What is it that the boss is doing that you would like to do in another way that you think would be more productive? Your boss is a great teacher. Well, I didn't get everything I wanted. Okay, well, that's good. You didn't get everything. So why don't you study some people who have gotten what you think you want and use them as mentors, as guides along the way? There's a whole world full of people who probably have something along the line of what you think would be a good thing. So why don't you do that? And why don't you learn a wonderful lesson? I taught this the other night when I was speaking to some juvenile offenders, people that were locked up, kids, boys that were locked up for bad deeds, for behaving badly. And I said, do you ever feel like getting even with somebody? And of course, a lot of us sometimes feel like we'd like to get even with somebody. I said, why don't you get even with somebody who's been good to you? Why don't you spend some time getting even with somebody who's given you something wonderful, who's taken care of you, who's looked at, maybe it's a grandparent, maybe it's a sister or brother, maybe it's a coworker, maybe it's somebody from school, maybe it's just some casual stranger almost. What if you got even with them? What if that was where your attention was focused? Imagine how differently you might feel and behave in your own life.
So, hope is the biggest asset humans have. But for the past few years, we have more earthquakes, floods, tsunamis, and other natural disasters than before. So people started losing hope. So what people can do to restore hope? Anything that you can explain?
Well, I'm not a scientist, and I haven't done the research that perhaps you've done, Kent, and others have done, about how many floods, earthquakes, fires, devastations we've had in the past few years, as opposed to the few years before that, or before that, before that. I'm not quite old enough to go back 10,000 years or 100,000 years. The planet's been here for a very long time, and I have a feeling it's probably had all kinds of these things forever. But we do have CNN, and we have and the BBC, and Al Jazeera, and we have a lot of media now that I don't know how many times some of your viewers may have seen the World Trade Center, the planes crashing into it. As terrible as it was, they only crashed into it once, one plane in each tower. But we've seen it thousands of times, and the tsunami was, nobody can imagine how terrible that was. That may not have been the only horrible disaster in the world. What I'm suspecting is, though, that we need to, again, to get perspective. And that's why that's one of my key words. I think it's very important to say, okay, how has the world really been? Does it seem to be worse now than it was at some other time in the past? Or, in fact, is the world really sort of just about as good or just about as bad as maybe it's been for a while? None of us would like to go back and live through the Dark Ages and plagues. None of us would like to live through some of the horrendous crusades in places where other people came in and dominated and overwhelmed and killed, some of the terrible wars that we've experienced all around the world. And so I go back to say perspective is a good thing. I think it's important to look back, but I use a quote on the back of this card of mine that a friend shared with me a while ago, and it's the third quote down. I'm holding this thing up, and I'm hoping people can read it.
That's right. Okay.
It's all right to look back. Just don't stare.
Yes.
Maybe it's the second quote down. What is it?
Yes.
Second one. It's all right to look back. Just don't stare. So this business of, oh, well, the good old days, I wish it was like the good old days. How good was it really? I mean, we tend to be very selective in our memory sometimes. And, oh, I wish it was like it used to be. Oh, if only I had done that. Oh, I wish I had done that. Clean your brain out with that kind of stuff. It doesn't serve anybody to wish I had done something different. You can't go back and do something different. You may be able to go back and clean up your mess a little bit if you made a mess, but you can't change yesterday. No one can. And all the time and attention we put on cleaning up the past and wishing it were different is time we cannot spend working on now, today. How can I be the best I can be? If I was unfair with somebody or didn't do well with somebody, yeah, it might be good to go back and see what you can do about cleaning up that mess, and the apologies and the restitution, whatever it can be. But the deal is, okay, I had that experience. I know what I got from it. I know in the future, here's what I'd like to get a lot more of, and here's what I'm going to do different from now on. That's what I think all of us have the power to do. And it's an enormous power when we let go of yesterday and put our attention on right now, which will, of course, affect where we're going to be tomorrow.
Okay, so what's next for you?
What's next? Well, communicating, working with the world, speaking to people, reaching out, helping kids.
Okay.
More media presence, movies in the works. Somebody's producing a movie about me now.
Wow.
So there's lots of things that are still ahead of me in my world, and one of them is to have the opportunity of working with people just like you, being able to work with people who are teachers and guides and help other people understand that all of us have a great deal of power.
Okay.
And that power that lives within each and every one of us is rarely fully utilized. And so it's up to us to decide what we're going to do next, what's next in our lives. And if I can help other people understand that, not give them power. I don't have any power to give away. All I can do is share some of what I've learned along the way. And if they choose to use that, then I've been given a wonderful gift. And, of course, so have they.
Okay. So if our readers want to learn more from you, how can they find you?
Well, good. The easiest way, and it's simple and simple. Google or go online, wmitchell.com. Now, my friends call me Mitchell, and of course, Kent, you are already calling me that, and I hope all of your viewers and listeners and readers will do that as well. I love to be called Mitchell. My first name is just the letter W. Nobody knows what the W stands for, and it's a secret. I'm not going to tell you. Okay. But if you just do wmitchell.com, then that will find me on the internet. Come to my website. There's some wonderful free resources on the website. There's things to read and watch and videos. There's a nice video that President Bill Clinton did for me, right. Yep. Talking about me, and that was lovely of him. Also, Anthony Robbins, if your viewers and listeners know about Tony Robbins. So they're both old friends. And so lots of resources there, and there's books and other materials that are out there as well. And I'd love to communicate with whoever's out there. And if somebody has an idea and wants to bring me back to their country, I'll be in Japan in September. I was in Kuala Lumpur last May, a year ago, May of 2012. And if somebody wants to communicate with me and get me to come out and be part of one of their meetings at their company or put a group together, I'd be delighted.
Okay. Any final advice for our readers?
My advice goes back to the very beginning of this conversation. Life is a choice.
Okay.
Life is a choice.
All right.
And what are you going to choose to do next?
Yep.
And if you're going to choose to complain about yesterday, if you're going to choose to say it's not fair, if you're going to choose to think that you can't have what you want, then you've chosen. Yes, if you choose to do nothing, that's a choice. Yes. You cannot not make choices. The only question is the quality of your choices. And those choices will lead to what's next in your life. Yes, and I think what's next, since you're already on the path of being involved in what you're doing, Kent, yep. is a bright future.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think that's all for the interview. Yep, that's it.
Pleasure.
Yep. Thanks for your time, Joe. Thank you very much.
It's great to be with you, Ken. Thanks so much.
Okay, all right. Bye.